Hello and welcome guys to ARIES Motorsports. ARIES here, and today we're going to be talking about tuning, and today I'm going to be presenting you guys with a guide. And I'm going to be defining what every component does on the car, so that way you will have a better understanding of what things do to it when you're adjusting these cars. The goal here is to give you the better knowledge of how these vehicles work, so that way you can start tuning your own car to your liking without always having to hope your friend gives you something and ultimately start winning races more often and being in those competitive deals. Start things off real quick. Be sure to follow me on Facebook. You can just type in ARIES Motorsports. You'll find me, and hit that like button. Also, you can hit the subscribe button here on YouTube. I would greatly appreciate it. And the last thing, you can follow me on Twitch at ARIES_Motorsports, where I'll be doing a lot more live stuff, doing hot lapping, showing public lobbies, etc., etc., etc. So without further ado, guys, let's jump on in this. We're going to go ahead and start with shock settings. So shock settings, we're going to go ahead and start defining some things for you. And we're going to start with bumps, okay? And this is going to go from front to rear. Each bump's going to do the same thing. You just got to find the right balance. Okay, so the definition of a bump is bump controls how fast weight goes onto a tire. So stiffer bump valve gets the load onto the tire faster. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. So if we were going lower, obviously it's going to be a little bit delayed on getting the load. If we go higher, it's going to go quicker on the load. Okay, generally you want to put your bumps to match the kind of abrasive and texture of the track to match what you want the car to do. Okay, so it's going to move on to the rebound system. Rebound dampening controls how fast weight leaves a tire. Therefore, a stiffer rebound valve gets the load off the tire more quickly and onto an opposite tire faster. Okay, guys? So basically, weight distribution. We want our weight to be good. We want it to be balanced. We don't want it too crazy and lopsided to where we can't control the car. So that is what your rebound is going to do for you guys. We're going to move on down to weight settings, and we're going to talk about the left weight. The left weight determines how much total weight is to the left or the right of the car. For ovals, you want the weight to the left to aid the cornering and preventing less weight from reaching the right side. Okay. For road courses, you want balance on that front weight due to the constant shifting of weight from turns. So guys, when you're on the ovals, what we want to do, and this is a NASCAR regulation, we want the weight to the left. Why? Because if we have the weight to the left, we're providing grip on the inside because we're planting that left side in there, and we're freeing up the right side to aid with rotation. Okay, so if you were to take that left weight and transfer it to left and drop it down to 50, you're going to notice that you would see poor cornering because your weight now is being thrown off. All right. If you're at a road course, we want that at the middle because we're swaying left and we're swaying right. So we want that to be balanced. We want the weight transfer in the left area and to the right area to be balanced. Okay. We're going to move on down to the front weight. Determines how much weight is being applied to the front of the car. For better front rotation, less weight is ideal. A higher weight will result in a tighter car with less front end rotation. Guys, this is a great component to loosen and tighten the car. Okay. If you want that, if you're lacking that good front rotation, you want that nose to feel like it's got more front grip, then by all means, drop the front weight. If you are getting too much front rotation and you're just breaking loose, well, get some weight put into the front there so that way it is snugging it up a little bit. Okay, this can vary track to track. This can vary from what else you are done to the car, such as your springs and your cambers, along with your track bars and even your wedge. So keep in mind that the front weight does a lot for you, and other than that, that's pretty much what front weights is going to do. We're going to move on to wedge. Adjust the amount of tension in the rear springs. Lower will loosen the car, and going higher will tighten the car. Okay, so all this does, guys, is compensate through your spring system. All right, it's going to help put more pressure or less pressure on those springs, which is how you get your tight and your looseness. All right, I'm going to move on to the ride height. So front ride height determines how much space there is between the front splitter and the ground. A lower setting will give you better cornering, parentheses faster, while higher creates a tighter front, slower in cornering. Okay, so if you're at a track that you want extreme downforce, you want to be able to corner really well, you want to bring this number down. Okay, if that track has a lot of bumps, for example, let's take Las Vegas. You can get around there with a 4 setting. If you don't feel comfortable because if you feel that the splitter is dragging, it's clipping things, then take the splitter up. Now you're going to have to compensate because now you're making the car possibly tighter at that point. So you're going to want to adjust other things, maybe front weight, wedge, etc. Okay. Just drop down to the rear ride height. Rear ride height is similar to the front height for cornering. However, a higher rear height in the rear can affect overall top speed as the spoiler is now being pushed up into the air, causing the car to have slower top speeds. Okay. Generally, what you want to do here is you want to keep this as low as possible. All right. If you feel that your back end is kind of out of control, you want it to be planted in the ground more. Well, then you can raise it up and get that spoiler up in the air. And what happens is that air is going to push it down, and it's going to basically creates a bigger push, like a weight getting pushed down on it. You're going to affect your top speed, but you might improve your handling. It depends on what you're looking for in the setup. Generally, I will run things slammed down to the ground because I want maximum control grip and I want as much downforce as possible. Okay, guys. So we're going to go ahead and move over to your spring settings, and we're going to talk about these front springs right now. Front springs affect the handling of the car for tuning and load distribution. Generally, a lower spring, known as a softer suspension, creates grip, but can also cause the car to handle poorly due to the inability to handle weight distribution. This can include braking, turning, and acceleration. So let's talk about it a little more. If I were to drop these springs lower, basically I'm going to create a really good grip because the suspension's nice and soft. It's going to handle things, but if you drop it too low, you're going to start bottoming out, or you're not going to be able to take bumps real efficiently. You're going to start noticing a bounce, and the reason is there is not enough tension in the coils. Okay, if I were to take those higher, generally I'm going to make the car faster because it's just that stiff suspension generally will make the car faster. It's able to handle much more pressure, especially the way we tune these cars in NASCAR. You want your suspension to be able to handle stress. If you can find the right numbers to handle the stress, you're going to notice loads of improvements. Okay, let's go ahead and move down to the rear spring system. Rear springs affects the handling of the car's rear end for turning and load distribution. Generally, lower springs, a softer suspension, will provide more control in the rear, preventing the car from spinning out under acceleration. Higher settings, such as a stiff suspension, will make the car handle more weight while loosening the car. Control can be obtained by adjusting other components of the car to handle the higher settings. Let's break this down. So with the rear springs, similar to the front, if I want that soft feeling, I go lower. Okay, it gives that rear end more control. Okay, I'm less likely to spin out depending on my other components, which that refers to your wedge, your front weights, your ride heights, your sway bars, and also your track bars. Okay, but in general, if I run those low numbers, it's going to be a soft suspension, giving me a much more comfortable feel in the rear. Now, once I start upping that, I'm going to start feeling a lot more control being shifted. What that means is I'm going to start feeling the back end have a lot more stiffness to it, and it's going to help rotate. So generally what you want to do is find that balance to where the car is rotating in the rear using the spring system, and then start building your track bars, your sway bars, and everything around the suspension, because that is what's going to help mold it all into a really good setup. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to tire pressures, guys. Tire pressures can determine how fast a tire wears out, top speeds, and cornering abilities. A lower PSI allows the car to have more grip but less top speed. A higher PSI allows the car to have higher top speeds but can affect the overall handling of the car's cornering ability. So basically, guys, when you're at tracks with low embankments, you're probably going to want to run lower PSI, especially on the left side. So that's why you see a stagger. You always see the left side's lower than the right. Why is that? We want the left side to grip. The left side is what grabs the inner side of that corner that allows us to make those turns. We compensate with the right sides because generally what we want is to balance out grip with speed and also the ability to turn. So we run that stagger. That's why the right sides are usually higher. Okay. For example, when you're on a road course, usually the front is the same and the rear are the same. Why? Because we're balancing. Everything, guys, is about balance of the car. Okay. If you are out of balance and your car's whack, you're going to burn tires really quick. You're going to be getting loose in a couple of laps, or you're going to be plowing into the wall. So tires, guys, is more of a comfortability thing. But your right settings can get you to where you can last the race, you have good tire consumption, or if you kind of screw it up, you're going to have really bad tire consumption. Okay, so this, like I said, guys, is going to vary depending on track to track and what you want it to do. If you feel like you're not getting in the turns, drop the left sides even more, and you can up the right sides even more to create more of a loose setting. If you keep that gap, which I like to call the left to right ratio, is by shrinking the gap. So that's the difference between the left tire and the right tire. Okay, so right now there's a difference of 0. If I were to shift this down to the left, that's a difference of 1. The car is actually already going to be just a tad bit looser just because I did that. Okay, same thing if I did it to the rear. If you balance it out and shrink it, it's going to get a little tighter and it's going to feel a little wonky. All right. Generally, the other thing with tires, guys, is you can actually make a car looser or tighter by doing specific things. You can obviously drop the tire pressures to get that snug, or you can do what's called a rear stagger system. So right here we have the right tire, and say we wanted it at 30. Cool. Sorry, the right front tire. Awesome, good deal. We want to stagger it with the other right side. So what we can do to make the car looser, I can increase the right rear tire pressure. It's going to give me a little bit more rotation, but you can start overheating that right rear tire even more. And the whole idea of being fast is try not to overheat that right rear tire, because we all know this game is going to destroy the tires. If I want to snug it up a little bit more, do the opposite. Drop it down a little bit. It's almost like adding wedge into the car. You're just creating a little bit more snugness. You're flattening that tire out. It's getting more surface area on the track. Okay, guys, hopefully that helps. Let's go ahead and move on to our miscellaneous settings. So we're going to start with cameras. So cameras determine the angle of the left and right tire of the car. Lower cameras make the tire more flat onto the ground. This can aid the car with braking and grip on lower banking tracks, but can reduce the turn-in response of the car. A higher camber setting aids the car in cornering on larger embankments, tracks, and increases the turn-in response. However, too high of a camber can cause the tire to wear significantly and faster than a slower camber. Okay, so basically what that means is we want to know what the angle of the track is. We want it. So let's take this for example. Let's say we're here at Phoenix. We don't really have much in banking, so you can run a lower camber. So generally we can run, you know, right up here in the 2s up to the 3s, and that's going to give you a really good feel. It's going to you're angling that tire. So if I were to take this camber, and we'll just go ahead and define this. Your left camber is going to be a little bit different. You're going to notice one's going to be positive, one's going to be negative. Your left camber, when it's positive, it is angling to the right. Okay, what you're doing is you're shifting the tire. If we're looking at a tire dead center, okay, you're shifting it to the right. The bottom is swiveling to the right, not the top, the bottom. Okay, so we're going to angle the car to the right. If I were to go to the left, I'm angling out the left front tire to the left. Okay, vice versa for the right front tire. All right, so generally you want to balance those off. If you go really excessive, what happens is when you go into test mode and you pull up your telemetry, and you'll see the 3 tire temperatures. If you're seeing really high tire pressure changes on the left or the right side, that usually means your camber is probably a little off, and you need to start adjusting it. That means you're rubbing it off. It means you're not getting full traction at that point. Okay, so that's what that means. Let's go ahead and move on to the front sway system. Front sway bars help control the weight distribution of the car while turning. The sway bar is also known as a stabilization bar. Lower setting creates front rotation of the car, but can cause the car to break traction with the rear due to oversteer. A higher setting will create less rotation in the front, causing the car to be tight, but helps prevent the car from breaking loose. So, similar to the front weight, guys, this helps obviously with the weight distribution. We are trying to get the suspension to shift and do weight transfer. So right now it's at none. This means this car would be looser than hell. Generally, you'll see your cars will start right around here. 1500 is kind of like the middle line base area, okay, that these cars usually start at. So this will give you a good feel. Now, as I start dropping this, I'm going to notice my front is going to react a lot sooner. I'm going to see it right there in the beginning of turns, and I'm going to see it on exit of turns throughout almost the whole turn. I'm going to notice that front getting that extreme grip, and it's wanting to go. If you go too low on this, guys, that back end is going to whip around. Why? Because now the weight transfer is getting thrown off. So generally, you want to find a good balance with your car, and then collaborate all the other components to help with that. So if you do want that front sway bar to be low, you're going to have to start probably dropping your track bars and tightening up the front weight by adding more or adding wedge at that point. Okay, guys, so keep that in mind. The rear sway, which is blacked out at these tracks because it is a NASCAR standard that they don't use the rear sway on most of the stuff until you go to road courses, does a similar thing. However, it's kind of like a vice versa thing. So if you want the rear to be more snug, and specifically this happens on road courses, you're going to go up on it. It's going to create that stability compared to when you have none. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move on, guys, to the track bars. Let's see. So your track bars, guys, are basically, they adjust. They're also what's tension release, and they're also the whole deal with trying to put it in the best terms for you. Track bars are basically the way that the weight distribution is being settled between the suspension and weight transfers of the tires. Okay, so generally, if you are wanting more rotation in a turn, okay, you're going to want to up the left track bar. Okay, we're going to go up on the left track bar. That's going to help you get down low. All right, essentially that's going to help you get down low. While you're doing that, though, you can reach an exceeding point into which you're going to be too loose and you're not able to control the car on exits. Okay, you can balance this with the right track bar. So if you're feeling that you're getting that left rotation, but it just feels like the back right of the car is not wanting to come around, then you can start adding some right track bar. Okay, that's going to help balance things out. Generally, you want to keep these as close as possible, and the reason being is balance. So if you notice in this game, when you turn in the car and you got that wave thing where the nose is like left, right, that's because your track bars are probably off, and or you have too big of a gap. That's creating that lovely wave effect that is so uncomfortable because you're trying to get on the line and you start scrubbing speed. If you want to snug up the car because you're too loose, for example, we want to run this for a sway bar. I'm going to drop this. I'm going to create less sway in the back, okay, by using those track bars. I'm controlling distribution of weight. Like I said earlier, guys, everything is about weight, all right? You want to use these to find the correct balance, whether you go up or down. Generally, if you go high, you're going to loosen the car. If you go low, you're going to snug up the car, okay? We're going to move on to brake bias, guys. Brake bias determines how much the brake is applied to in the front or rear of the car. A higher setting, front braking, will tighten the car while braking. Okay, a lower setting, rear brake, will loosen the car while braking. These settings can affect the car's handling while turning and braking. So what does this mean? Here's a 50%. If I were to drop this, what's going to happen is if I'm preparing to go into a turn and I got to use the brake, I'm going to free up the car's front end tremendously. This can help you get into that turn while braking a lot easier, and it can also make you a lot looser, and you can lose control if you don't have enough brake. If I were to go the opposite direction and increase that front brake, I'm adding more brake pressure to the front of the car, which is going to make the car tighter while braking. So at road courses, generally you want to find that happy medium. You want to have looseness in the back of the car while braking so you can make those turns, okay? But if you have too much brake, you notice that you're on the brake but the car doesn't want to turn. That's because you probably have too much brake bias. It's a real simple concept, guys. Grill tape, guys, most of you probably know this already, but it provides the downforce to the front end of the car. More grill tape, can be also a hotter engine, allows the car to push closer to the ground, and it also helps with top speeds, but can cause the engine to overheat and lose power. So try to keep your engine temperatures below 255 degrees, guys. It looks like the threshold is between 255 and 260. Once you start hitting there, you'll probably notice your top speed drop and your engine's overheating. Okay, a lower setting can aid with cornering, but will affect top speed. Now, generally, I've come to notice that sometimes a lower grill tape, such as like Talladega and Daytona, if you apply one of those, will suck up quicker. Now, but when you step out of line, you're going to start sucking in air, so you're kind of open to parachute a little bit. All right, so this is basically balance. You want to keep that engine cool, but you also don't want to keep it too cool where you're losing performance, and you don't want to run it too hot to where you're losing performance. Okay, so we want to keep that in mind. Your wheel lock, guys, this is a personal preference. This is going to be something that you're going to want to just tinker with to what best feels good with your controller or your wheel. But a wheel lock aids the steering inputs and the reactions. This setting varies from each driver, and there is no right or wrong when you want to adjust this setting. Once again, this is more of a comfortability thing. I got people who will run my setups, and they'll change the locks all the time. Just depends on the calibrations you got going. No big deal. This is a comfortability thing. Okay, your steering offset, guys. Your steering offset creates linearity in the steering wheel. Raises the setting will automatically increase the wheel to turn left. So, for example, I'm at 0, which means if I am on a steering wheel or on the controller and I'm not touching it, as we're going straight, I shouldn't have any left or right, unless I got weird cameras and some other things that are making the car pull. Okay, let's just say that I have a perfectly balanced car. I should be going straight by having everything on the joystick or the wheel going straight. Once I start increasing this, what I am doing is adding wheel linearity, which is automatically going to start turning the car left. Okay, that's when you start noticing, hey, I gotta kind of hold a little tension to the right of my joystick or my wheel. Well, that's because you're steering offset. This can help you guys in cornering. This can help you guys to help you turn less sometimes. Once again, this is honestly a personal preference in my opinion, but it can help and prove to be a valuable asset when it comes to control or steering reaction. Gear ratios. Guys, this is pretty simple. Probably most of you know this, but a lower ratio creates a longer gear. Good for drafting, good for not overheating the engine and not redlining. Okay, you can sometimes find some extra speed also by running these lower ratios, but too low, you're going to bog out. You're not going to have enough acceleration. A higher ratio will aid with acceleration. Okay, so that's why we have a first, second, third gear that are always higher than our fourth gear, right? Because we want acceleration. Okay, so if you're at a track and you're like, hey, look, I don't need a long gear. I need short gear. I want acceleration. Cool, great. Start upping your gears, make sure they match, and there you go. The rear end differential, guys, just changes the ratio. All right. So if I were to say I like this, I like this, I like that, this will start making the gears longer incrementally. Okay. Same thing if I go the other way. This going up, shorten the gears incrementally. Okay. It's up to you guys what you want to do, what you feel is best for your car. That's pretty much it, guys. Once again, I greatly appreciate your guys' support. I hope this guide helps you understand a little bit more about what tuning does to these cars. And it's an art, guys. It really is. It is a skill set that takes time to develop. So don't be frustrated. If something's not working, take a deep breath, look at your numbers again, and say, okay, what do I like? What can be changed? And test with it. And just make sure that you always save a copy of your best feeling car before you start changing things, because the next thing you know, which I've done hundreds of times, start changing shit, and next thing you know, I'm like, oh hell, I don't even remember what I had that was doing well. So once again, guys, I appreciate the support, and hopefully this helps. Keep tuned for other videos, and once again, as always, we'll see you on the track. ARIES out.